A racist man mocked and kicked a blind black girl's guide dog, thinking he could get away with it. But he had no idea the dog was a former K9. What happened next will leave you speechless. This is a story of justice, courage, and standing up against hate. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves in Parkside Square as 17-year-old Amara Johnson moves with remarkable confidence through the crowded paths. Her guide dog, Max, a powerful German shepherd with watchful eyes and a distinguished grey muzzle, leads her with purpose. Unlike other service dogs, Max carries himself with an unmistakable alertness, a reminder of his past life as a police K9. Amara's hand rests lightly on Max's harness as she navigates the park with the same grace she shows when her fingers dance across piano keys. For a girl who lost her sight at age 12, Amara moves through the world with quiet determination. Her short, neatly braided hair catches the sunlight, and her face, usually set in concentration, breaks into a smile as children run past. "Good boy, Max. Let's find Grandma's bench," she says, her voice musical and warm. 6 months ago, Amara's world expanded dramatically when she was matched with Max. Before him, she'd been hesitant to venture out alone. Now they move as one. Max has become her eyes, her protector, her freedom. Across the park, Richard Keller sits alone on a bench, his face tightening as he spots Amara. At 45, Richard's once successful life has crumbled around him. His property management business is failing, his marriage has ended, and bitterness has become his closest companion. As he watches Amara, memories flash through his mind. The day Marcus Williams got the promotion Richard believed was rightfully his, the foreclosure notice on his office building, the growing sense that people like him were being pushed aside. "They all get handouts," he mutters, crushing his empty coffee cup. "Special treatment at every turn." Richard's eyes follow Amara as she reaches the meeting spot, where she waits for her grandmother each Sunday. The old woman who raised Amara after her parents' accident has taught her to stand tall despite the world's cruelty. But today, Grandma Johnson is running late. Something in Richard snaps as he watches people smile at Amara and Max. Before he can stop himself, he's on his feet, moving toward them with purpose. "Must be nice getting special privileges everywhere you go," Richard says, his voice cutting through the pleasant park sounds. "Bringing your dog wherever you want, getting the best spots, special treatment." Amara turns toward his voice, her expression confused but composed. "Excuse me, sir?" "Max is a guide dog. He's working right now." "Yeah, sure. I bet you get everything handed to you," Richard continues, stepping closer. "Playing the disability card and the race card. Double benefits, huh?" Amara stands straighter, her hand tightening on Max's harness. "Sir, I don't want any trouble. Please just let us be." Something about her dignity enrages Richard further. Without warning, he delivers a sharp kick to Max's hindquarters. "Your mutt's in my way." The transformation is instant. Max, the former police K9, doesn't attack. His training is too good for that. Instead, he shifts his body between Amara and Richard, his playful demeanor vanishing as a deep, warning growl rumbles from his chest. His posture changes from service dog to protector in a heartbeat. Nearby, a group of park-goers turn at the sound. Phones begin to emerge. Eyes lock on the confrontation. Richard freezes, suddenly aware that the dog he just assaulted is no ordinary service animal. And the quiet afternoon in the park is about to become anything but peaceful. Richard staggers back, momentarily startled by Max's transformation. The playful guide dog has vanished, replaced by a vigilant protector with muscles tensed and eyes locked on the threat. For a split second, fear flashes across Richard's face, but pride quickly pushes it aside. "That dog is dangerous," Richard shouts, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It should be muzzled. It should be put down." Amara's heart pounds in her chest. Though she can't see the gathering crowd, She can feel their presence, hear their murmurs. Her hands tremble slightly, but her voice remains steady. "You kicked my guide dog, sir. That's against the law." Her words are measured, controlled, even as fear courses through her. "Max is trained to protect me when threatened. He didn't attack you." In Richard's mind, memories surface of his father's harsh voice. "Those people are taking over everything. You've got to stand your ground, boy." The lessons taught at the dinner table, the casual cruelty disguised as strength, all of it shaped him. After losing his business to mounting debts, watching his neighborhood change, and feeling increasingly irrelevant, Richard found comfort in blaming others for his failures. "I know your type," Richard sneers. "Always playing the victim. I barely touched your mutt." Phones are out now. At least 3 people are recording. Some onlookers watch uncomfortably, looking away when Amara seems to glance in their direction, but not everyone stays silent. "Young man, that is quite enough." The voice belongs to an elderly white woman with silver hair and a teacher's authoritative tone. Mrs. Patterson steps forward, her cardigan fluttering in the breeze. "I saw exactly what you did." She moves to stand beside Amara, her presence solid and reassuring. "I taught this young lady's mother, and I won't stand by while you harass her daughter." Richard's face contorts with fresh anger. Another bleeding heart. "Mind your own business, lady." "This is my business," Mrs. Patterson replies firmly. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 60 years. I've seen enough bullying to last several lifetimes." Other voices join in now. A young man in a jogger's outfit, a mother with 2 children, a group of teens who've stopped their basketball game. The tide of public opinion is turning against Richard, and he can feel it. "All of you filming this? Fine. Record how these people get special treatment." Richard's voice rises, desperation creeping in. "You can't even question it without being called racist." Just then, an elderly black woman hurries into the gathering crowd. Grandma Johnson's eyes widen as she takes in the scene, then narrow as she recognizes Richard. "You," she says, her voice cutting through the commotion. "You're the man who denied our apartment application last month. Said it was already promised to someone else, but the listing stayed up for weeks." Richard's expression freezes. He hadn't recognized Amara, but he clearly remembers her grandmother. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammers, but his eyes shift guiltily. Grandma Johnson steps forward, placing a protective hand on Amara's shoulder. "My parents couldn't even enter this park when I was a child. Had to stand outside the gates while white children played. I marched so my granddaughter wouldn't face the same hatred, but here we are, 60 years later." Amara absorbs her grandmother's words, drawing strength from them. Yet inside, she battles conflicting emotions. The desire to stand strong against injustice, warring with the very real fear and humiliation of the moment. Her hand finds Max's fur, steadying herself. Richard sees the phones pointed at him, hears the murmurs of disapproval, but he's gone too far to retreat now. His world is collapsing, his reputation, his dignity, and rage blinds him to consequence. "That dog doesn't belong in public places," he shouts, lunging forward to grab Max's leash. "I'm making a citizen's arrest for public endangerment." It happens in an instant. Max shifts his weight, using his body to block Richard's reach toward Amara. The sudden movement causes Richard to lose his balance. He tumbles backward, landing hard on the pavement with a surprised yelp. As Richard scrambles to his feet, face flushed with humiliation and anger, a new voice cuts through the chaos. "Police! Everyone stay where you are!" A uniformed officer approaches the scene, hand resting cautiously on his belt. The crowd parts, and all eyes turn to the newcomer, whose arrival will change everything. Officer Carlos Diaz surveys the scene with practiced caution. A man on the ground, a crowd with phones raised, and a German shepherd standing protectively before a young black woman. His instincts kick in, defaulting to what he's been trained to do. "Ma'am, I need you to control your dog." Officer Diaz calls to Amara, his hand hovering near his belt. "Sir, are you injured?" Richard seizes the opportunity, scrambling to his feet with newfound confidence. "Officer, thank God you're here. This dog attacked me. I was just walking by and it lunged at me. These people are threatening me." But before Amara can respond, voices from the crowd rise up. "That's not what happened. He kicked her dog first. We have it all on video." 3 different phones are thrust toward Officer Diaz, each screen showing Richard's unprovoked kick. The officer's expression shifts as he watches the footage, then changes completely when his eyes lock on Max. "Wait a minute." Officer Diaz approaches slowly, his posture relaxing. He kneels to Max's level, studying the dog's face. "Unit 447? Max?" Max's ears perk up at his old designation number, his tail giving a single wag of recognition. "You know this dog?" Amara asks, confusion evident in her voice. Officer Diaz stands, emotion flickering across his face. "Know him? Max was my partner for 4 years in the K9 unit. I'd recognize those eyes anywhere." He turns to the crowd, authority returning to his voice. "This is a retired police dog, one of the best in the department." Richard's face drains of color, but he attempts to salvage his position. "That doesn't change anything. A dangerous animal is a dangerous animal, regardless of its history." "This dangerous animal saved my life during a warehouse raid," Officer Diaz says sharply. "Took a knife meant for me. And now he's doing exactly what he was trained to do, protect his handler without causing harm." The officer turns back to Amara, his tone softening. "I apologize for my assumption, miss." Something shifts in Amara in this moment. The fear and tension she's been holding dissolve, replaced by a clarity and purpose that straighten her spine and lift her chin. When she speaks, her voice carries across the now silent park. "This happens more often than you think," Amara begins, her words measured and clear. "People question my right to exist in public spaces. They doubt Max is a real service dog. They speak to me like I'm a child, or talk only to whoever is with me, as if being blind means I can't understand them." She takes a step forward, commanding attention despite her youth. "Max is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's illegal to interfere with a service animal. But this isn't just about laws. It's about human decency. Being black and disabled means I face double the judgment, double the barriers, double the fight just to live my life with dignity." The crowd hangs on her words. Even Richard seems unable to look away. "I feel your stares every day. I hear your whispers. I sense when you move away from me on the bus, or cross the street to avoid walking near me. My blindness didn't take my humanity, and it certainly didn't dull my awareness of how people treat me." Officer Diaz nods slowly, recording device now in hand. "Ms. Johnson, would you like to press charges for assault and interference with a service animal?" Richard's face contorts with indignation and growing panic. "This is ridiculous. It was just a misunderstanding." But as the crowd's murmurs grow louder and the video evidence continues to circulate, something in his expression cracks. For a fleeting moment, shame crosses his features before he masks it with defensive anger. "Everyone's so quick to judge," Richard protests, but his voice lacks its earlier conviction. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything while they get special treatment." Mrs. Patterson steps forward. "What special treatment, young man?" "The right to walk in a park. The same park where her grandmother couldn't even enter as a child." Officer Diaz clears his throat, an uncomfortable realization crossing his face. "I need to acknowledge something. If these videos didn't exist, I might have handled this situation very differently. My first instinct was to see the dog as the threat." He looks directly at Amara. "That bias is something we're working to address in the department, but it's still there." Grandma Johnson, who has been quietly watching, now moves to stand beside her granddaughter. Her voice, when she speaks, carries the weight of decades. I was 14 years old when I joined my first protest. My father had been beaten for drinking from the wrong water fountain. I've marched. I've been arrested. I've seen progress and setbacks. She looks around the circle of faces. This park was segregated when I was a girl. Signs right at that gate said, "Whites only." Now my granddaughter can enter, but she still isn't truly welcome. She places a weathered hand on Amara's shoulder. Each generation fights the same battle with different weapons. In my day, it was sit-ins and marches. Today, it's camera phones and social media. But the core of it, the right to exist with dignity, that fight remains the same. The park falls silent as her words settle over everyone present. Even the birds seem to pause their songs. In this moment of clarity, the weight of history and the ongoing struggle for equality are palpable in the afternoon air. 1 week later, a local news anchor reports on the incident that has now captured national attention. A video showing a man harassing and assaulting a blind teenager's guide dog has gone viral, sparking outrage and conversations about discrimination. Richard Keller now faces charges of animal cruelty, harassment, and interfering with a service animal, which could result in significant fines and potential jail time. The anchor continues. The video, which has been viewed over 3 million times, shows bystanders stepping in to help 17-year-old Amara Johnson and her guide dog Max, a retired police K90. In the Johnson home, Amara sits at her piano, fingers moving across the keys with purpose and emotion. The melody she creates is both melancholic and hopeful, a musical expression of the turmoil and strength she's experienced. Grandma Johnson listens from the doorway, tears in her eyes. "That's beautiful, child," she says softly when Amara finishes. "What do you call it?" "Unseen guardian," Amara replies, reaching down to stroke Max's fur. For Max, and for all the people who stood up that day. On her computer desk sits a microphone and recording equipment. Since the incident, Amara has started a podcast called Guide Rights, where she educates listeners about service animal laws and shares stories from other disabled individuals facing discrimination. What began as a way to process her trauma has transformed into powerful advocacy. "We're recording the 3rd episode tomorrow," Amara explains, excitement in her voice. "Officer Diaz is coming to talk about police training and service animals." Across town, Mrs. Patterson addresses a group of 30 community members gathered in the local library meeting room. Maps of the neighborhood are spread across tables, and pamphlets about bystander intervention sit in neat stacks. The Community Shield program isn't about vigilantism, she explains to the diverse group before her. It's about creating a neighborhood where everyone feels safe and respected. We'll learn how to recognize discrimination, how to safely intervene, and how to support victims. Among the attendees are several who witnessed the park incident, now determined to never be silent bystanders again. At the police academy, Officer Diaz stands before a classroom of officers and trainees. On the screen behind him is an image of Max in his working harness. When I approached that scene, I made assumptions based on what I saw, he admits candidly. Those assumptions nearly led me to mishandle the situation. Without video evidence, I might have further traumatized the victim. He advances the slide to show Amara and Max. This department is implementing new training protocols for interactions with service animals and individuals with disabilities. These protocols will be developed with input from disabled community members, not just about them. Several officers shift uncomfortably in their seats, but others nod in recognition of necessary change. In a rehabilitation center across the city, Richard Keller reluctantly pushes a medicine cart down a hallway, part of his court-mandated community service. His face is thinner, his expression humbled. The viral video cost him clients, respect, and nearly his freedom. An elderly black woman in a wheelchair signals for assistance. Richard hesitates before approaching, his ingrained prejudices battling with his new reality. When he finally helps her take her medication, she thanks him warmly. The simple human interaction catches him off guard. "You're welcome," he responds, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Later, in the break room, a supervisor evaluates his progress. "You're doing better, Mr. Keller," she notes. "But this program isn't just about putting in hours. It's about changing perspectives. Are you actually learning anything here?" Richard stares at his reflection in the window. "I'm trying," he answers, and for the first time, it's not just words. 3 months after the incident, Parkside Square hosts a community festival celebrating diversity and inclusion. A stage has been set up near the central fountain, and Amara sits at a keyboard, Max faithfully by her side. The crowd applauds as she begins to play, her confidence evident in every note. In the audience, Officer Diaz and Mrs. Patterson stand side by side. Members of the Community Shield program wear distinctive purple armbands. Grandma Johnson watches with pride from a front row seat. After her performance, Amara addresses the crowd, her voice steady and clear. Music helps us bridge differences and find common ground. It reminds us that beneath our diverse exteriors, we share the same emotions and desires for respect and belonging. Later, as evening approaches, Amara and her grandmother walk through the park with Max. The same paths where she once faced hatred now bring friendly greetings and respectful interactions. "Do you think things have really changed, Grandma?" Amara asks as they reach the bench where it all began. Grandma Johnson considers the question carefully. "Some things have, some haven't. When I was your age, I couldn't even enter this park. Your mother faced different battles. Now you face yours." She takes Amara's hand. "The fight continues, but so does our courage. Each generation pushes forward, making the path a little easier for the next." As they continue their walk, Amara reflects on the past 3 months, the pain, the growth, the connections formed. Standing up against hate isn't something we do alone, her voice narrates, as we see them move through the golden evening light. It takes personal courage, yes, but also community support. Max protected me that day, but so did strangers who chose not to look away. Max walks proudly beside her, alert but relaxed. The park around them is alive with diverse families enjoying the evening, a snapshot of what could be when barriers fall and understanding rises. "We all have the power to be unseen guardians for each other," Amara's voice concludes as they walk toward the setting sun. "And in doing so, we create a world where eventually such guardians won't be needed at all."